Alrighty, if everybody could find a seat, please. We're going to get the Planning Commission meeting started. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Molly, if you could help me with the roll call, please.
Sure thing. Mayor Atwell?
Present.
Alderperson Eicher?
Here.
Commissioner Cahalan?
Here.
Commissioner Hausman?
Here.
Commissioner Jaschinski?
Here.
Commissioner Schultz?
Here.
Commissioner Merrick?
Here.
Commissioner Weiler?
Here.
Excellent, thank you. Alrighty, looking for a motion to approve the minutes of January 26th.
Move to approve the meeting minutes from January 26, 2022.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, we are now moving on to citizens' comments for those items on the consent agenda only. Is there anyone that would like to make comments for items on the consent agenda only? Seeing none? Citizens' comments for the consent agenda? Sure, no worries. You good? You good?
You're looking for public hearing, right?
Yeah, I'm looking for public hearing. Okay, no worries. No worries. Okay, citizens' comments for the consent agenda are closed. Commissioner 6A has been removed, so we're really only looking for a motion for approval on 6B.
Move to approve the consent agenda item 6B.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, if you are consent agenda item 6B, you are approved. All right, now we'll move on to item number 7, public hearing number 1. Topic, Plan Unit Development, Conditional Use, General Development Plan, Nagawicka Road East, tax key DELC 078-198-9004 and DELC 078-198-8005. Joe's Legacy Farm LLC, John Spears, Plan Unit Development, Conditional Use, General Development Plan for Conservation Type Single Family Subdivision. Is there anyone that would like to speak to public hearing number 1? Come on up.
Seems like I'm making a habit of this.
Well, we're glad you're here.
All right. Just a few comments here. First of all, I noticed that
May I get
there's-
your name and address, please?
Sorry. Charles Gallagher. I live at 1343 Perry Lane, which is on the south side of the development. There's been a lot of talk about all of the landscaping that's on the roadside, but I think you really need to take a look at the landscaping on the backside as well, because there will be, as it was brought up in the Common Council, a culture clash between the houses that are being built, because they're all going to be high-end houses. It's going to be a beautiful development, I'm sure. But us rednecks on the other side have lots of things in our yard that they aren't going to like. I've got a tree stand up in my cottonwoods, for instance. And, you know, if I'm out there shooting a deer and somebody's a card-carrying member of PETA, they aren't going to be real happy with me, I'm sure. So the more screening you can do to prevent that kind of culture clash would help. So that's one of the things I'd like to have you kind of address a little bit more. I had a couple other things on my list. One is that in the declaration, there's, the lawn and yard. I'd like to see something in there to make sure that the common areas are maintained without heavy use of chemicals, because all of us on the backside all have wells, not city water. So, our neighborhood, most of the neighbors don't use a lot of chemicals because of that, because we don't want contamination. So something to say that keep out chemicals that would cause contamination. And the last thing is in the amendments to the declaration, which is section 26, it gives them the power to completely eliminate the document or change it in any way, shape, or form. And I really think that the city of Delafield needs to protect themselves from this going south once the developers walk out. So I'd recommend that you make some changes to protect certain sections of that document, like sections 13, 15, 18 and 19, and 32 and 33. Because those sections are ones that really keep it looking like a good development. The other ones, you know, I could care less what kind of fences they put up or light posts or anything like that, but I think the city probably wants to keep those sections where you can have at least some kind of control. So that's what I would recommend that you put in. Other than that, I think it's going to be a beautiful development when it gets done. I had objections to it because of the size, but I really do think it will be a good development. So thank you very much for your time.
Yes, thank you for your comments. They are appreciated. Who else would like to speak to public hearing number 1?
Mayor, can I interrupt for 1 second? Ramona? Yes. You're welcome to stay, but I just want to make you aware that you were approved with the consent agenda. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak to public hearing number 1? Public hearing number 1. All right, public hearing number 1 is now closed. Okay, now we'll move on to number 8, citizens' comments on items other than the consent agenda and the public hearing. So that's everything else. So if you're here and have comments to make about specifically our group from 9D that missed comments last time, this is your opportunity to come up. Anybody who has comments on that. Okay, come on up. And I just want to remind you that a property... If you could just hold on just 1 second before you get... No, sit down. Just before you get started talking. For those people that do own property within the zone that we're speaking of, not the neighbors to the properties, but if you actually own the property where the zonings and land use is being looked at, you will get another opportunity to come up and have a discussion with the Planning Commission. So this is a chance to make comments for everybody. I just want you to be aware, those that own property there along Genesee, you will get another opportunity to have a two-way conversation. Because of the type of situation I have, that's where we are in the process. Wasn't available during the first meeting. It is available in this one, so I just want to make sure you're aware of that. So please, name and address.
Kathy Schutz, 211 Oneida Street. I would
Can
like
you
to...
spell your last name for me, please?
Schuetz.
Thank you.
I would like to comment on the zoning for Genesee Street and the discussion for an alley behind there. I know in your information here that it's probably not feasible, but I just want to reiterate, we have the property on the backside, and we have a garage that we got approval through the city to put right up against the property line. So we would
If
definitely...
you could just try to talk into the mic so people on TV can hear you.
Okay, so we would definitely like to not see that alley take place at all. And on the zoning information, per a discussion with American Transmission Company, private driveways and private parking lots or other areas are not supposedly allowed under the power lines that they own or control. So I'm not sure where the dental office parking lot would go with that information. So I just wanted to, I didn't know if that was up for discussion or not.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for your comments. We appreciate them.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming tonight. Who'd like to be next? Come on up, ma'am.
Marcia Stocks, 226 Genesee Street.
Can you spell your first name?
Marcia.
And what was the address again?
226 Genesee.
Thank you.
Okay. Little background. The house that we live in is the last family-owned parcel of what was once Orchard Hill, which has been part of Delafield since the mid-19th century. So I planned to stay there and age in place. I don't particularly want to see surrounding homes torn down. Okay, that's my first comment. My husband has a little bit of a comment too. This is a stable neighborhood that's been around for 60 years. His parents were the builders of most of the homes. Anyway, some of the homes are generationally owned. So we've been pretty quiet down there and kept a low profile. But anyway, we aren't really in favor of rezoning, just because we're not afraid of change. There's been much change, but this proposal is pretty loosely defined at this point. And I understand many cities and small towns have homes that are converted to commercial use, and most of it works out very well. But it's an organic process for the most part, usually adjacent to a commercial district and asking to be annexed to that district or whatever. But anyway, if this is to become commercial at some point, we believe it should be market force and not city-driven. And the other thing, this is my husband's comment, the request from one absentee property owner shouldn't dictate a change in the entire stable neighborhood character. And from what Kathy said, Brad's sister lived in that home for many years. It was part of the compound, the family compound. And those transmission lines, I'm pretty sure you aren't able to put anything under them. I don't know, it's been thoroughly investigated, but I believe that's true. And then, of course, it's the alley. We came from the point of at-home business without residents to tearing down homes to put an alley as an easement to these properties because they front on Genesee Street. Now, the speed limit in front of my home is the same as it is downtown, 25 miles an hour. But we all know that's not enforced or followed anyway. There are other properties on Genesee Street in the 400 block, for instance, that do have parking in front of the buildings. And not to say the least, the bank has parking in front of the buildings too. And most of those businesses are low impact. They don't have a lot of traffic. A few people go into the bank, they see some of the people up in the offices, but it's not like it's a constant parade. The other thing I have concern about for the neighbors to the east, you put an alley right next to their property. It's not a public street. It doesn't have lighting. We're right by I-94. If you're going to put commercial buildings there, especially retail, you're going to have a security issue. Those backyards, they're right up against that alley. It doesn't have any kind of protection. And the other thing about the alley is all those properties are under individual ownership. I don't know how you force the owners out of their homes unless you condemn them, which I'm hoping you're not planning to do.
No. No.
And as far as if you find it necessary to rezone, I'd like to see you maintain a low intensity type of businesses in that area. We've got, the Beehive, the financials down there, the bank, that little strip mall next to City Hall. Not a lot of foot traffic, not a lot of car traffic. If you bring retail to that area, they rely on customer traffic. That's their stock and trade. And so I don't think it's suitable. But if you, convert to an office here and there, people can stay in their homes until they die. Mm-hmm. And that's what I like to see. This ends my comments.
Well, we appreciate them and thank you for coming tonight. Okay, who would like to be next? Ma'am, come on up.
Nancy Rademacher, Rademacher,
Done that
200
before.
Genesee. I'm used to spelling it out. We moved here 26 years ago with the intention that this is our home for the rest of our lives. We looked at knowing that we were far off the street, wonderful. We've got a very short backyard. If a alley went into our backyard, I'd probably have about 12 feet off of my house, maybe 15. I mean, it is, I actually have a picture of it for anyone that might want to see it. But in the 26 years we've been here, the traffic in front of our house has increased, and there's a lot of traffic there at times. We can't get in and out of our driveway during real busy times. If anybody's been spending much time there around school or any other times, busy time, I sit there. One of my ways of entertainment is watching the accidents on the off-ramp. Okay, it was that big garbage truck that tipped over. It was, kind of a mess. It was a whole day affair. The houses that we have, because of the fact that we're set back far, we've all got narrow lots. So the way it stands right now, we're very, if you will, if I can use the word, intimate with our neighbors. There is not much distance between us. So if you were to suddenly take one of the houses, say that was in between us, and put a business, I would lose the home feeling in my own home because it would be a business aspect there. I think that was pretty much it. That, and if it's rezoned, does that take our property taxes up? Because we're talking about, out of these homes, a number of us are retired. And the economy's not looking that great for retirement incomes. That's all.
Great. Thank you for coming. Okay, who'd like to be next? Come on up, sir.
Good evening. Jacob Feutz, Feutz, 208 Genesee. So I provided some written comments. I was led to believe that was circulated, so I'll keep it brief here.
Sorry to interrupt you, but if you are speaking very loud, I just want to make sure it's
Closer
into
to the mic. Yeah, you're welcome. A couple of issues to highlight in there that I think haven't been addressed, and I think Nancy touched on a little bit, is traffic, both regards to developing as commercial and as the alleyway as a possible solution to that, or even access off of Poplar. I think the biggest issue with traffic in this area, and obviously an expert should weigh on this, is the intersection of Poplar and I-94. The accidents that we see, that I see on my little home camera that's pointing at my front yard, typically involve vehicles trying to access either 94 or Genesee off of Poplar. Any amount of moving traffic in that direction, I think, is only going to make the issue worse. Regarding the access on Genesee, the primary issue is being opposite of the school. So it's one thing to navigate backing out onto or pulling out onto Genesee during normal times, but if you have a customer that's visiting even a very low-intense business during pickup or drop-off time at Cushing Elementary, you're going to run into a lot of conflict between those parents who are just trying to get to school and somebody who doesn't realize the flow of traffic at those times of day. Regarding the establishment of a new zoning district, there's no clear demand for that at this point in time. I know there's a proposed dental office for this location, but I think that at least the draft that was discussed last month and has been currently put to paper would not allow such a dental office. Outside of that, I believe the majority of the other property owners have no intentions of going anywhere. There is no larger commercial entity that's interested in scooping up a bunch of these properties and turning them commercial. So I question whether it's worth everybody's time and for us to have to keep coming to these meetings to discuss some sort of new zoning district for 6 properties that have no intention of doing anything in that regard. So I question a little bit how we got to this point, how we had residents that had to come up in front of this council and talk about their homes being torn down, because that was released in a plan commission's packet. But that's where we were, and I hope we can resolve this quickly, put this one to bed with the wishes of the residents now heard. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. We appreciate your time and comments. Okay, who would like to be next? Who would like to be next? Anyone else? Citizens' comments? Anybody else? Okay, citizens' comments are now closed. All right, we will move on to number 9, unfinished business. 9A, DELC 0781 989004 and DELC 0781989005. Unknown address on Nagawick Road East, owner Joe's Legacy Farm LLC, applicant John Spears. Applicant is requesting the Planning Commission approve the plan unit development, conditional use, general development plan for a conversation type single-family subdivision. Amy, want the applicant to come up?
Sure.
And if you can give us an overview of where we are right now and some of
Okay.
the documents we got today and.
So I'll be real quick because the documents were submitted today and I haven't had an opportunity to review them, so I'll let Rob do that part. But just to bring you back up to speed, on Monday, the Common Council did adopt an ordinance for the land use plan and rezone amendment. It was a 4-3 vote. And that would amend the land use category from agricultural to the low density, so 1 acre density, and then zoning from A1 to RE1, which is the 1 acre rural estate, which would typically require a 1 acre minimum lot size unless they do a plan unit development conditional use, which is what they're here for tonight to request. We have talked about this development a couple of times over the last several months, so I think I will forego giving the explanation and let the applicant talk about anything that has changed since the last meeting or anything that you want to make sure you get across, and then I can go over any missing pieces from there. Does that sound okay? And if you don't mind making sure you address the traffic impact analysis, that would be good. And then the Plan Commission has the new information, so if you want to just let them know what sheet to look at, and I will also put them up on the screen.
So Amy, if you could also just briefly describe the difference between A and B for some of our newer commission members, really the topics
B.
you want us to speak about on
Okay.
A versus the topics you want us to speak about for B.
So there's 2 agenda items. The first is the conditional use to allow the conservation type subdivision in general. And then the second agenda item is to consider the preliminary plat, which when an applicant comes in to divide land through a land division process, or I should say subdivision plat, they go through 2 steps, a preliminary plat and a final plat. Both of these items, just to be clear, are at that preliminary stage. So if you move forward with the conditional use, it's the general development plan, which is the general concept that they are proposing. They have to come back in with a specific implementation plan that includes all of the details, and I can go through that more later, but all of the construction plans, the developer's agreement, the financial assurance, the detailed landscape plan. So if there's landscape elements you don't like here, that doesn't mean necessarily that they can't move forward unless it's really bad. You can point out what you don't like, and if you want to move forward, then they need to address those comments before they come in with the specific implementation plan. Okay? So signage, monument, all of the details have to be addressed for the specific implementation plan, and then they have to meet the comments from the preliminary plat review before submitting a final plat.
John, floor is yours.
We have made some changes since the last meeting, specifically on landscaping. So we've looked at the drainage pattern, and we are going to be installing the black crisscross fencing along Nagawick Road, both sides. But it all, again, depends on where it is, and I think we've actually got a location of it. In addition, we are going to be on the agenda Monday night for the Parks Committee. We're talking about paths and trails. So once we have that established, we'll know exactly where our trails are going to be. We've redone our landscaping. We still have to have more done. And again, I'm hearing all the comments, so we'll take that into consideration when we meet with our landscape architect. The other thing we did is we did a traffic study, which was done by Traffic Analysis and Design, which we have a copy. I think you should have a copy, Amy, too?
Everyone has a copy
Right.
of the, I'm sorry.
summary.
You have a copy of the first 4 pages, which is a summary. There's a lot of technical detail that I did not send you.
Right, but I have a copy if anybody wants to see it. And it basically said that the current traffic could double and it would still not have a significant impact on the roads. In addition, they said they did not feel an acceleration, deacceleration lanes were necessary. So again, we've submitted a copy to the city.
With the traffic analysis, I just want to quick point out, the engineer's report does recommend the decel XL lanes. They did not have this report when they reviewed it. They are actually recommending tapers, if that makes sense. So that is their recommendation, that they put in tapers.
All right. And again, this is a transition from medium to low density, which makes sense in the area because this property is going to be sewer and water. So that's the reason for the half-acre plus lots, and then with, again, about 30,000 square feet of open space per lot. So it'll be over 20 acres of open space. So I think, and you might have some comments too.
Amy, if you want to pull up the PDF I gave you.
Can you provide your name and?
Sorry, Rob.
Yeah, you have to move that mic. Thank you.
Rob Davey, Lake Country Engineering. I'm the engineer for the job. If you want to pull up the PDF, yeah, with the fence. If you take a real close look at it, you can see outlined in red where we are proposing the fence. And with the fence, we're trying to but put the fence between the path and the lots so the path looks more like it's in the public right-of-way type, even though it meanders in and out. The fence will be completely on our path, but we want people walking on the path to know that, okay, here's a residential lot.
Yeah.
You can't really go on it. So that was the main purpose for where we showed the path and the fences along the path. We've also done a preliminary stormwater management plan, which shows that we've provided enough outlots, room in the outlots, a series of different kinds of stormwater BMPs to meet the city's ordinance, which is you can't increase the flows for the 1 and 2 year storm, and you have to take the 10-year proposed and release it at a 2-year release rate, and you take a 100 and release it at a 10-year rate. So we have demonstrated, I mean, we have a lot of detail to get into before we go to construction, but we've demonstrated preliminary that we can meet that with the room that we've given. We've also done a preliminary grading plan to show that we can get the grades to work in a manner. We did give it to a grader, and we are real close to balancing the site, so we're not going to be hauling dirt in or out, give or take. A lot will depend on what we run into with sewer spoil. But we've done preliminary holes at some of the different manholes in some of the deeper areas, and we came up with a pretty decent material that we should be able to put back in the trenches. So we're not anticipating a whole lot of import or export on this site, so we don't want to truck it in or off. It's not a good thing all around. We've looked at the path situation. We will be connecting the path down to the south. At this point, the easement that was given, I believe, is just a little too small. We have a 10-foot easement to put an 8-foot path in. It can be done, but it's extremely hard with only a foot on either side of the path. So I don't know if we have to approach those neighbors or if the city would help us out to get a temporary grading easement of an extra 4 or 5 feet so we can put it in. And then also on the south end, instead of making a 90-degree bend where the easement shows to kind of cut the corner a little bit so that we have a decent angle so people don't have to come down and do a right angle, and that would be a permanent easement for that path. So as you can see, the 5 trees that we've located, they've already kind of shown where the path is going to go, and we would not be disturbing those trees. We want to maintain those. So that portion of the path will be built, as I was talking with Mike Port, where we would just dig out 12 inches of soil, bring back 8 inches, and then, or 9 inches and 3 inches of asphalt. He said that's when you're retrofitting an area, that's how the city's been building them.
On the other areas where we actually can grade it and compact it, we're gonna be using probably a little less of a gravel section, but the same amount of asphalt. But we have the luxury of compacting the ground underneath that. On the north path, it's a little trickier situation. We went through and did a tree inventory that shows all the trees within the bridle path, just to the south into our property and just off our property to the north. We also topoed the area so we could see what was going on in there. And minimally, if we want to try to get a path in there, we would need at least 12 feet, if not 14 or 15 of that 20 feet to actually get it graded. So in that process, we'd have to lose four oak trees, or I think 3 oak trees, 1 shagbark hickory, which are all in the 13 to 16 inch range, and then 2 dead trees in order to maneuver. As you can see on the plan, they're right in the middle of the path, which they just must have grown up for lack of use, or, you know, I'm sure it was cleared 25 years ago when it was built. But those trees kind of right in the middle, we would have to remove in order to get that path back to a usable condition.
If I could interject at this point too, because it is our intention to grade and seed the bridle path.
It is?
Yes. And
Okay.
so the only thing we have to be.
You're knocking things off my list.
The only thing we have to be careful of is liability. And again, as the path is right now, you wouldn't want a horse to walk on it, much less a person, so.
But we can go over those more specifically with Parks, and then they can make their recommendation, and then also DPW.
So just a reminder, when it comes to trails, you know, it's Park and Rec has input, but the implementation plans come from Public Works.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so it's, you
we'll go
get
through
guidance from Park and Rec and you get implementation from
Sure.
Public Works.
Rob, can you just clarify? I don't know if I caught that completely. So you've agreed to grade and seed the path, but in the process of doing so, you'll be removing the trees? Is that what you're saying?
In order to get that path graded properly and the ravines that have been cut, compacted, the machine is probably 10 to 10 and a half feet wide that could do the work. So we're trying to minimize it by saying 12 feet, maybe 13 or 14. And those trees that I've labeled on that plan, I've measured distances, I just can't get around them. And if I tried, we'd be knocking the roots off and they'd die in 3 or 4 years anyway. So I don't like taking good trees down, but in the long run, I think they would be coming out anyway.
We don't want to take them down, but if it needs to be graded, you can't get a grader in there under 10 feet, right?
Yeah.
So it's the ones that are labeled?
The ones that are labeled are the ones that we would need to remove. I believe there's 4 of them in on the 2 pages and 2 dead trees, which really don't count anyway. I mean, they're dead, so those aren't the big issue. It's the live ones. And they're honestly, it's not like we're taking out a 42-inch oak tree that's been there for 500 years. The 13-inch oak tree is maybe 20, 30 years old. So it's a nice tree, but it's not one of those historic trees that you see down in INRA where you can see some of those bigger oaks. Moving along to the northeast ditch, as I call it. The engineer indicated they would like to see the asphalt path connected up to the bridle path. This is purely engineering, not what shouldn't be done. But years ago, they allowed a berm and ditch system to be graded in to keep all the farm runoff from the barns and things from getting into that pasture so they could do some organic farming. We're maintaining that flow path so that we don't have to intermingle the easterly property stormwater with ours. And the way we have it in there, this asphalt path if it were connected, would dead end right into the swale and into grass. I would think that we leave the asphalt path out by the roadway, and then when this property to the east gets developed, we would continue our path system, our asphalt path system through there. And then at minimum, we could mow a 5-foot path on top of the berm so that if people wanted to walk up to that, they could. Or, you know, I really don't want to see a lot of bicycles getting onto that bridle path because I don't think the bikes would intermingle with the horses. I'm not a horse person. They
don't like them.
don't think that would be good, and I think that would be a happy medium between those owners to the north and what we're trying to do here. So we do have some connectivity, but not really leading people up there, if that makes sense to you. Do you guys have any questions regarding any of the engineering or any of the implementation plans? So if I may, we will be going to Public Works. I did do water pressure studies, and we can meet the 20 PSI flowing at the 846 GPM, which the fire chief that was his concern, is can we have enough pressure for the fires? And I did them throughout all our hydrants, and Mike's still reviewing them, but I believe we have adequate capacity for that, so we don't need a booster station for it. And then I did a preliminary look at the property to the east, and at the very far northeast corner, I kind of roughed in a cul-de-sac, just pure generically to get some sewer lengths. And I backed that down so that we could get our sewer depth at the property. And again, I'll be going in that more depth with Public Works to see if we need to do any adjusting on our sewer depths.
Did you see the comment about putting in a sign at the bridle path as the public trail would enter the property that no horses beyond this point? Would you object to?
I don't think there would
No
be an
objection.
objection. It would.
Okay.
I mean, I'm looking at the engineering, and that to me is cosmetic.
The question is how many people will adhere to it?
Well, that's an enforcement issue. We need the sign, right? So Dan, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So Dan, when we're talking about the implementation of the path connection to the north and some of the challenges they're talking about and the path connections to the south, do you feel comfortable that Public Works Committee can work with them for an appropriate compromise to that as opposed to that being discussed here at the Plan Commission?
I think it should be discussed more at Public Works.
Okay.
The 9-foot easement is not gonna work. I think we need some kind of permanent. If we're gonna put an 8-foot path in that 9-foot easement, every time the city needs to go out there and do something, that's 6 inches on each side of that path.
Yeah.
So whether it's them or the city, it's gonna be a public path. We should try to get more of a 12-foot easement or something like that.
Yeah. But it might be a two-phase process
It could be,
potentially.
yes.
Right?
And
We
then
do what we can and then we set it up to make it easy to go to the next step.
We can do that, yep. And the other end, I'm okay with that, seeding that trail until that east development comes in.
Would you consider a narrower path in that south end?
No, I would not.
You talked to the owners of that property?
No, I have not. I just got the information the beginning part of the week, and I saw it just glaringly stare out at me on that we can't get this built when I drew it in.
Is that all on one property?
Yes,
Okay, it's one property owner.
yes. It's the old Geeson property, so I believe she just sold. And there is an existing easement, so it's not like there's gonna be any surprise that there's a path gonna go there. It's just a matter of, is it gonna look nice, or is it gonna just be kind of thrown in there?
Yeah, it's not much to work with. I mean, you could put an 8-foot trail in a 9-foot easement, but anytime, let's say 15 years from now, we need to redo it, we're back looking for a temporary easement. You could go that route, always look for a temporary easement, grading, or whatever you want to call it, maintenance easement, every time we need to go in there. Or you seek a permanent one now.
And the city engineer would kind of help with that process is what we've done in the past.
Yeah, because I know that when the house was sold, the buyers were aware of the easement.
That's a good first step.
Yeah.
Versus the one that says, I never knew that was
Too bad we
there."
didn't get to it before it was sold.
Sure. So, yeah, that can be done and discussed at Public Works.
Okay.
And then just so you know, the roads that they're proposing are 24 feet wide, 29 feet measured with the curb and gutter. That does require Plan Commission approval. So if you approve this, you are approving a narrower road, which is recommended by the engineering staff to reduce the impervious surface, required infrastructure and stormwater management facilities related to that.
Right, and if I-
It is the same width that Hawthorne put in as well.
Right, and most communities are 24 feet wide.
And then sidewalks too, just so you know, you have the authority to require sidewalks. They're just proposing the one path on the road that veers to the east so that we can connect to 83. But they do have a pretty significant trail system here, so.
Right, and we're installing the paths in
Yep.
lieu of the sidewalks.
Also, as part of that road cross-section, we will be looking at putting in a roll face curb versus a vertical face curb. That will eliminate each property owner when they come in to saw cut the curb head out or having to remove it. The one I would recommend if you don't have a roll face is the City of Economowoc. That's a pretty decent roll face curb that does the job pretty nice.
Is that an 18-inch pan?
No,
It is a
well, it's an
2-foot?
18-inch pan with a
Yeah.
1 foot.
With a 1-foot rolled
Yep.
face.
And on the private trails, I know this came up at the last meeting, and I'm just not clear in my head as to where we are. I know some of the private paths, I thought you were talking about doing mowed grass. Is that, and I had asked at the meeting if we could get some TB in there, or something other than mowed grass. Where do we stand on the private trails
Are you saying within the subdivision?
within the subdivision?
Most of the times they don't want the gravel under it because, the grass doesn't grow as well. So most of the time we
Or
just
the path itself, is it a mowed grass path?
mowed grass path.
Mowed grass paths. I only bring it up because and I think I said this before, but I've known that to exist in other communities, and there becomes issues with the property owners and the HOA that some like it there, some don't, then they purposely don't cut the grass, some people put play section, they try to make it not usable, and if it's grass, it's easier to not maintain it either because the HOA, whatever the reasons may be, if there's something more of substance, if it's even, doesn't have to be blacktop, but it could be compacted TB, it could be mulch, something that designates
Maybe
it.
mulch in some areas, like in the woods and everything too, would make more sense.
So
we
somehow it's
still-
delineated so that people know that it's there, I guess I don't have the solution, it's a concern, and I'm wondering what you guys might be able to come up with.
We've had mowed paths in other subdivisions and
Have you ever seen any problems with them?
no,
The HOA mows them and no issues, okay,
so far.
yeah.
But we do usually identify where they are too, and then they're mowed and maintained. And it all depends on the homeowners association, how strong they are. Again, we have subdivisions that are 40 years old that are still extremely well maintained.
Okay.
Before I forget, the restrictions are draft in nature, so they will be coming in with final declaration of restrictions with the SAP. But there is you refer to a 15-foot rear setback, but you're proposing 20 feet in the CU and on the plat, so just that'll need to be corrected. I think
Yep.
that's just a typo. And then to the public comment, we will want to review at least certain changes, so we will provide comment on that. We don't just want the homeowners association to make any change to that.
We'll review it also, and so the changes cannot be made on the deed restrictions unless you have 60% of the owners that agree
Right.
to it. That's not always the easiest thing to get done.
But some of those things, we want to make sure are also implemented at the city.
Did you want to add on there that with the
The
city's
city?
approval?
Yeah, we'll review them, and we have a meeting with the attorney tomorrow morning. I don't know that we need to review every single change in the document, but but certain changes.
So this is to the citizens' comment about 13, 15, 18, 19,
Yes.
32, and 33?
Yeah,
Okay.
and we'll review those too.
Are you suggesting that the city would have a say in any future changes to the covenants? Have we done that before?
I think, I don't know if in their,
Siemens
I
nodding his head.
I probably told Seaman they had to do
It might be
it.
the first.
Because what I see is that those restrictions end up conflicting with your restrictions. So like they have the flexibility built in there, for example.
We had a boathouse issue.
And then suddenly what folks end up relying on are the declaration of restrictions. They see and look for those way before they look at a CU agreement.
We've done others
So-
that do require the municipality's approval too.
Yeah.
That'd be good. I'll just weigh in too. I know there was a comment, and maybe now is not the perfect time, but I know we get another swing at it, at the specific implementation plan. But in regards to the screening that was brought up, for Mr. Gallagher's benefit, we ran into it a couple times with Carriage Hills where somebody didn't like a pole barn across the street, and I was like, well, that's kind of too bad. That was their first. So the city has a history of having those people's backs when somebody new comes in and complains about something that's been old. But the fact that these are fields that are screened, you know, the residents' backyards that are already there are screened by trees that more than likely they've either planted or have taken care of. And I think it's incumbent upon you not to leverage all of their work for your screening for your property. We're really looking in the landscaping, some significant screening along those edges where the homeowners especially along the east and the south are really close.
And we have agreed to do that, and
Okay.
we'll address that too, because
I
Are we
know, I
talking
saw
like pines and things like this?
Yeah, I saw it in the notes, and now is a perfect time to go look because there's no leaves on the trees. The ice is pretty though, but you can see which homeowners are going to be the most.
it's mostly the ones on the south. 'Cause
But
it's
yeah, that'd
not
be
as
really
much,
beneficial to see that there's something that's putting some of their minds at rest and trying to fast forward what those trees will be and understand that you're not planting 40-foot tall trees, but where they're going to get to. So I'm concerned.
Usually
I
what
appreciate that.
we've done is we do bring spaded trees in that are anywhere from 12 to 20 feet tall with the evergreens, depending on what we can find.
Sure. Okay. That's my comments on what we're looking forward. after
Some
we
of them
get this
aren't
first.
here tonight, but we heard and listened to what they've said previously, and we're following up on it,
And we
right?
have talked to a couple of them.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about the dirt. I ran into an issue in my last couple of homes in a development near my home where there was a substantial amount of fill that was needed to correct some grading and get some drainage. It was extremely aggravating because when dump trucks dump dirt, they slam those back gates. And you're saying that the grading looks like it's going to come off without much of that activity going on at this point?
Yeah, right now, we were 8,000 yards short. We're anticipating about 2,500 yards of sewer spoil. But this preliminary grading plan was more to a finish grade. So I can adjust a lot of those building pads and do an interim grading plan so that homeowners themselves can utilize their basement spoil on their own yard rather than having to haul it off. And I'm also a firm believer of getting 9 inches to a foot of topsoil back in versus the minimum of 4, just so homeowners have enough topsoil to do their work.
I think you're one of the few from what I've seen.
Okay, good. It's good to know. We'll look for how that works out.
It's better if we can balance the site.
Yes, it's cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
And
So
better.
I just want to go back to the turning lanes one more time because I'm not really sure what that word means that you just used.
Tapers,
Dan,
I think
can you
it,
tape- Taper-
Deceleration
Well,
lanes, I think that's overkill
Just-
on this project.
just taper.
But the tapers,
Okay,
Yes.
so that, I wanted
it's
to
like
get
a
your
triangle
opinion because I don't
taper.
know.
as you're coming up to the turn, it gives you 4, 5, 6 feet. I don't know what the standard is, but there's just a paved taper to the back of the curb
Okay,
or the front.
okay. And we'll make sure that what we do is what's required by ADT, correct?
Well, the city standard for those tapers,
Yeah. Okay,
which is coming from the traffic study is saying we don't need the XL and decel lanes, so,
Okay.
which is based on ADT, so getting back to that. So yeah, the appropriate tapers.
Okay.
Dan, when is it appropriate for them to go to Public Works? After they prepare their construction plans?
I think so.
Okay.
I would like to go now.
I would think
It
so.
doesn't
So
hurt.
that I can
That would be Wednesday.
hash out, well, as soon as we can, hash out a lot of the issues.
Yeah.
And then there might be another.
That's
we would
fine, but
probably
at
need
least we
another
get
day.
hydrant placement, valve placement.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
All
too.
that good stuff worked out before I design it and have to change it.
So there's a meeting this Wednesday,
Yeah, it's the first Wednesday of the month.
and what
So this-
time and where?
6:30 in this room.
Okay?
So if you want to be on that agenda,
Got it?
Yes.
you'll need to get Molly 12 copies of the plans. They don't,
They do paper.
paper, what do you,
Yes,
the,
we would want paper for
like the
this.
grading plan? Or what do you want, the whole
Absolutely grading plan,
The preliminary
landscaping?
water and sewer layout,
yes.
where we show our paths.
Any of that engineering stuff,
Do you need the
landscaping
stormwater
is-
plan?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And
You
what
want the
size
whole-
documents do you
the whole thing, or
want?
just the whole thing's 105 pages
No.
long? Just the
No,
cover sheet? and the
Exactly,
drainage
like a
plan.
summary, sure, because Mike will be looking at,
Yeah.
his staff will be looking at everything.
We'll get those over tomorrow.
And what size do you want those?
The D size
Okay,
plan
11 by
set.
17?
Yep.
All right, well, I've got one more thing on my list, and that is a request for you guys to put in, I would say, identical fencing to what we're talking about along around Nagawicka Road that you've said that you've agreed to do between the path and the property line. Can you put that also in the gaps along the horse trail, not tearing down any trees, not removing anything, but when there's open gaps, can you put those as
There's
a
very-
barrier between the horse trail and the private properties of your development?
There's very few open gaps. We went and walked the property and took pictures too. And all there is on the north side of the property, there's some fencing that's come down, so we'd have to take a look at it because again, they've got the big equipment that comes in and they put the fences in with pneumatic pounders. So, to be honest with you, I don't think it makes a lot of sense, so.
If there's open gaps, can you look at putting them in there,
Yes,
please?
we will.
Okay.
I have just one more thing. So they're proposing flexibility, which is laid out in a table. So RE1, which is a minimum 1 acre lot size, does not have a floor area ratio provision. They're not proposing one either. If you want to control the overall bulk on the individual lot, that is something that you could put in as a requirement. For Hawthorne Farm, which is, essentially the same lot size, half acre, they do have a 35% floor area ratio cap. So I just wanted to bring that up. On a half acre lot, that would limit the floor area to 7,623 square feet. That does include all roof structures, first, second floor.
That includes the driveway too.
No, it's
doesn't?
it's
That's
roof
different than
floor
impervious.
area.
All right. Okay.
It's a good size house.
Are you anticipating bigger houses than that?
Not that we're aware, but I don't know.
So it's just when you get at the smaller lots,
I'd be okay with that.
sometimes
Yeah.
it's nice to control it to
35%.
some degree.
I think it would be a good idea to, for sure, look at that as including, 7,500 square feet is huge, at least to me.
Especially on a half acre lot.
Yeah,
And we're allowing
That's
up to that.
that's all of the
Right.
building. The
That's-
garage,
That's a
the
lot.
first floor, the
Garage,
second
first floor,
floor.
second.
Who
I
would
don't
want
think
it?
the basement's included.
Includes the
in that.
second
Put
floor?
them on a half
Is that
acre lot.
included a finished basement?
I believe, Scott's not here, but I believe it's only if that portion is the portion of the basement that's exposed.
Okay, because there's a,
So he breaks it up into
And
fractions.
there
number
might,
of exposed
and there might be
basements.
some, because if you include the lower level, that does make it, if you include the lower level, it does make a big difference.
The other option would be to go to something like 50%. This is different in that the density is a little bit more dense than Hawthorne, is a 2 acre, more rural than this. But it doesn't hurt to put something in, or
I'd like
somebody
to
might
see-
max the entire lot.
the 35%, but also with clarity from Scott, whether that includes that basement or not.
I believe, just from another site that I worked with him on, I believe it does include the fraction of the basement
If
that's
it's exposed.
exposed.
Because if you have a, say for example, 4,500 square foot house, 2,500 square feet finished in the lower level, which a lot of people do, and then you're gonna be close to your
The
7,000.
garage, and is the garage is part of it?
Yeah, then for sure, because most of them don't include the garage in the living square footage, living space. Can we address?
I'd be over, I mean, my house be over, it's not a monstrous house.
Yeah,
Well, I was gonna say, if you come up with a number that you think won't be exceeded,
yeah, because you're
we
including the
can get
garage.
something in there.
Yeah, if you include the
First floor,
garage and then an
second floor,
exposed basement,
and
Yeah.
because we
finish
got a lot of
level.
terrain that's gonna have
I can
exposed.
get you up
Yeah.
to,
So
I agree, I can
It's
get you
not,
up to 7,000.
So what about 50% with, that would be about 10,000.
Can we address that when we get a little further along in the, so to?
It's
so we can
usually
look at
built
it?
into the, so
Oh.
potentially the group will pass this tonight, and then we have to write an agreement, and that would be included.
I think 50%, John, is a lot. I mean,
I-
that's
I
10,000.
think so.
That's something you'd see on a Conomowoc Lake.
Yeah,
All right, well, probably that amount then. The 35 is too tight, so.
let's go 50%.
I would think we can live with 50, because then they don't have to finish their whole basement. They can do a great room.
All right.
I don't like it when we build houses and tell them they can't finish the whole thing.
it doesn't work.
They can't finish
I mean, we spent a year and a half fixing that around the city because it's ridiculous, right? I mean, nobody follows it, and so.
I meant a finished basement. You're not gonna do a finished basement in your whole basement. You're gonna
Right,
have
a rec
mechanical
room.
room, other rooms for storage. And I believe what Amy was saying is only the portion that's finished for living area would
Well,
count in that floor. that
The area
floor
that's
area ratio.
exposed, so
Yeah,
usually half of the house doesn't have, I mean, he really breaks it down and looks at the entire
And we have a
rectangle.
formula. We're missing Dave Greenway because he could recite it off the top of his head.
What's a typical three-car garage square foot, just roughly?
Was it? So,
Maybe 700 and some square feet.
So just if you round it up to 1,000, so you got 9,000 square feet left, divided by 2. If it's 2-story, that's 4,500 per floor, right? Not including this basement exposed?
Basement.
Yeah, but a lot of these lots have exposed basements.
I think 10,000 is.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty
I'm
big.
not gonna hit 10,000.
That-
No,
yeah, I don't.
If you've got something bigger than 50%, I think that's a little bit excessive for what we're saying is a half-acre lot size.
I think the 50% would work, the 35 would not. Otherwise, we'd have to come back here for variances.
Well, so
Well,
they're
then you gotta
recommending.
approve
Yeah,
a
I
whole
know.
new set of rules.
I don't think you're gonna be able to justify that, but their recommendation does go to council for final action. So if you have a really good argument against it, you have one more opportunity.
We'll look at some plans.
Okay, what else, folks?
Now, do you have any other questions? So I do, as far as a recommendation, hold on a second. So I have 2 different items. So with the CU GDP, I'm recommending that, or asking that you recommend that staff draft a conditional use plan unit development GDP agreement inclusive of the below conditions for adoption by Common Council, with further development review and recommendation of the Park and Public Works Committee. I believe you asked for those 2 committees to review it at our last meeting. So if they, for some reason, had something that they really needed to be addressed, we can certainly include that. I would assume the Public Works Committee's comments would be dealt with through the final engineering that needs to be completed in grading plans. But the conditions being that it has to be in accordance with the RE1 Rural Estate Zoning District as set forth in the zoning code and as modified herein. And then the next condition lays out the flexibility that's being proposed. Again, the items that are proposed for flexibility are minimum lot size from 1 acre to half acre, minimum lot width from 140 feet to 110 feet at the front yard setback, road setback 50 feet to 35 feet, rear setback stays the same, 20 feet, side yard from 20 to 15 feet, floor area ratio, you are proposing here RE1 to 0.5 or 50%, so that would change from my report. And then minimum open space is provided in the common open areas. And then the conditional use would automatically terminate in 12 months, so it would be null and void unless they receive a specific implementation plan and enter into a developer's agreement and develop the site within 2 years. An SIP needs to be submitted for review and approval, and it needs to include a stormwater management and utility connection plan, public road improvement construction plans, trail construction plans, grading plan, lighting plan, final landscape plan, including restoration and long-term maintenance of the common open space areas, a detailed tree cutting plan and mitigation plans. They are cutting 2 trees. They're planting a whole bunch of trees, but they just need to show where that mitigation is occurring. Subdivision signage and the developer's agreement with any financial assurance, and final subdivision restrictions, which will require a few corrections. The landscape plans shall clearly label trails as public or private and how they will be improved. So if you're proposing those mowed paths or pavement or what have you, just be very clear. If any public trails are located within the outlot areas, an easement has to be provided for the benefit of the city. So their public trails do weave in and out of the public right-of-way. Public trail connections shall be made to the improved portion of Woodside Street and the Bridle Trail. Specific improvement requirements shall be established as part of the SIP. The city will maintain the public trails, and the individual lot owners or homeowners association will maintain the private trails. The developer will be responsible for constructing both. And the common open spaces shall be owned in undivided interest by all lot owners of the overall development, which they already note on the plat. And then your action would be supporting the road width and lack of sidewalks.
Did you get all that?
And then, they did talk about adding the evergreens to that final landscape plan. We can, go through this again more, and then you'll be going to Public Works and Parks, so may get a few more comments there.
So you just summarized 9B, right? After
The CU,
CU.
9A.
9A is much shorter.
9A is what I just summarized.
It's conditional.
The conditional
Only change
use.
is the 0.5.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. They're, in your report, they're opposite. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, and just make sure there is that change in the RE1 floor area ratio to 0.5.
Yep. All right, so I'll make a recommendation that we approve the conditional use GDP and recommend that the staff draw that conditional use plan, unit development plan, including the conditions outlined with the 6 points in the planner's report, with the addition of a modification to the floor area ratio at 0.5, and with an acknowledgement that the Plan Commission is supporting the road width and lack of sidewalks.
One more, can I add one? Are you comfortable with them doing their grading in the Bridle Trail, or do you want that to be spelled out? Okay.
We have it written down and we verbally heard they're going to do it.
It is in the engineer's report, too, which,
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion, folks. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
they have to stay for the preliminary plan.
I got the
I do have a question
Okay.
for them.
Oh, they got the next one.
Okay. 9B, DLC 07819890004 and DLC 07819890005, unknown address on Nagawicka Road East, owner Joe's Legacy Farm LLC, applicant John Spears. Applicant is requesting the Planning Commission approve a preliminary plat for a conservation type single-family subdivision.
So, same land division that you just reviewed. The only thing I have as a recommendation is that they have to comply with all the surveyor comments, which are included in the engineer's report. There's several minor things, maybe a couple things worth noting. There will be restrictions for the isolated natural area. They won't be able to disturb that unless it's benefiting the environment. And then, again, it's mostly just typo and making sure there's certain notes on there. The road names have to be approved by the fire department. I did look into that. I think you're all good with the subdivision and road names. The only comment that I just wanted to talk about real quickly was there's encroachments from the CSM, and I think they're mostly landscaping type encroachments, but is that real clear where the line of landscaping is between the property to the south and, I'm going to go to it.
The issues of the landscaping easements were primarily because the owner of the house that built it owned the field. So they decided to mow and cut and plant an orchard over and across. And we are trying to keep as much of that stuff as there as possible, with the exception of those 2 pine trees that I had shown on my plan. We are gonna keep the orchard. I'm gonna do my best to stay away from that north lot line, our south lot line, where there's some trees planted. So I don't want to take anything out if I don't have to. I believe our surveyor, Land Tech, went out there and did make sure that those 3 pipes were in, so the new lot owner knows where their property is. They're aware that the orchard kind of crosses over. They don't own all the way to that mowed strip that you see.
And the intent was to make the orchard part of the park and the landscaping too.
Any other questions? Are we ready to have somebody make a motion?
I'll motion to recommend approval of the preliminary plat subject to the survey comments, which are part of the engineer's memo dated February 6, 2022, and subject to compliance with all objecting and approving authorities.
I think it's February 6th.
16th,
Oh, I'm sorry, February 16th. What did I say? 20?
6.
See, I should have had those on.
I'll second.
All right, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're now going to number 9C, DELC 07439999006, unknown address on Nagashoda Road, owner Hawthorne Development Incorporated, applicant Seatman Realty, care of Jim and John Seatman, discuss and provide feedback regarding the proposal and schedule a public hearing for a revised plan unit development, conditional use general development plan for the development of Hawthorne Farm South, Phase 2 of the development.
Hello.
Amy, overview?
Okay, so this is Hawthorne Farm Phase 2. Phase 1 included the adjacent property to the northeast, which is under construction. The applicant did come in last year in March of 2021 and did receive GDP approval for the entire development and included the land use plan amendment and rezone. However, this south end did include townhouses. Let's see, what was it? 12 two-family condominium buildings with a total of 24 additional units. And that, in order to meet the open space requirements and density, they did need to benefit from, which would be Phase 3 on the north side of the road. This new development, we'll talk about a little bit more, but may not need to benefit from the north side of the road. They did change it to single-family lots instead of those two-family. They are proposing, how many lots are you proposing? 13. 13 single-family lots. They are proposing, you can see the bluish line on the computer, or maybe their colored copy looks a little bit nicer. There's a private trail system within the development, and then a public trail again along Nashotah Road. And then the public trail will also go around their stormwater feature, which will be in the outlot, which is owned by the city. And then that public trail will extend down to the subdivision to the south. So with that outlot that was dedicated to the city, they are also proposing a little kiosk for a bike repair facility. And then the stormwater pond, just as a reminder, was discussed during the original phase, and the Plan Commission did think it was a nice idea that it would add an aesthetic feature to the site, as long as there was still some usability by the public, which is why the trail loops around the pond. The entire acreage here is 26.45 acres. Other than that, it's really similar to phase one. Same flexibility is being proposed, am I correct? And a couple changes with the GDP. So I guess what I'm recommending, or what's on the agenda, is for you to provide them with feedback so that they know that they can move forward with the engineering costs. But if you can also, if you're comfortable, schedule a public hearing. I believe they would like to move forward with amending their GDP, because the exhibit did include the townhouses. And then there's also a requirement specific to them laying out the construction and maintenance responsibilities for the road extension on the north side. And you can decide whether or not you want to continue to require that as part of this phase or as part of the next phase, because they're not using that acreage quite like they did when they originally proposed twice as many units. They really needed a good amount of that acreage in order to do that. So we need to talk about those two things, and that would require an amendment to the GDP. And then I think they would move straight into SIP, so potentially doing both at the same meeting. In order to do that, though, they do need to submit all of the detailed plans, which I've laid out in this staff report. And they're aware of, because they just did it for phase one. I do want to point out, though, with the open space requirements, so in order to meet the open space, they are using or trying to benefit 5,000 square feet of open space on each individual lot, which, if you look at the ordinance, it does require at a minimum that an easement be put in place that gives any one of the lot owners in that subdivision the ability to use that. So I don't know if that's going to be desirable to the applicant or not, to have easements in the back of all of the lots that make it essentially common space for all of them. If they can't benefit from that, then they would need to go back to using a certain amount of acreage on the north side of Nashotah Road. Still doable, it's just they got to go back to needing some of that acreage. And then if they need that, you need to decide, do we need to lay out the maintenance and construction responsibilities for the road? Future road. Not construction, but responsibilities.
Didn't we already cover that mostly in the last one?
They provided the reservation, so the location is laid out, but we didn't require any responsibilities, because they didn't need any of this acreage for phase one to benefit phase one. So, they could have done a CSM and just split it off into two lots and just used the east side for phase one. But on this phase, but we wanted the responsibility to be laid out in this phase because they need that land in order to develop. So if you still want to require that, then we would need to have conversations with our attorney, the city attorney, to see how and what we do exactly. Am I missing?
So you're saying the financial obligation to build the road on the north side
We're not
tied to them, or you'd be saying?
We're not saying necessarily that they have to submit their money now. We're saying we need to lay out that agreement right now, what the future responsibility will be.
Because if they just give us the easement, then the construction of that entire road is basically going to fall on the property to the north that needs the access through.
Yeah, unless those lots would be developed along the road, right?
And that was
Because then that'd
You guys
have to be
correct me,
something
but
that
is
they'd
that
wrangle
phase
with.
3?
But wouldn't that be something that you'd have to wrangle, they'd be wrangling with the other property owner on who pays for what, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
if we don't lay anything out now, then if they wanted to be difficult with the property owner to the north, I mean, they could say, we won't do anything or offer any responsibility, and therefore you're responsible for the entire length, and then go and build their lots.
After the roads.
I mean, I'm not suggesting that's what, I mean, I have worked with them before. Just kidding. I'm not suggesting they would do that.
Just for the record, Jim Seatman, John Seatman,
Address?
North, West 240, North 1221, Pewaukee Road, Waukesha. In the ordinance 778, I think we got it resolved, in which it specifically says that we'll reserve the road, which we did already in the first plat, and that the developer, this is reading right out of it, agrees to construct and pay for a portion of the road that would accommodate future development in that area depicted in the site plan. So we're already responsible if we're going to do any lots in phase 3 that we have to build the road for that section of it.
Yeah, so I think the reason why, so the last sentence says specific construction and maintenance responsibilities will be established and required at such time phase 2 is developed. The reason is if you don't, so the way we laid it out is Seatmans are responsible for a specific portion of the road construction, and then the developer to the north is responsible for the rest. If the developer to the north wants to develop before they do, you know, they could hold up the construction. So that's just, it happens. It happens. So we're not asking for any financial guarantee. We're just getting them to agree to do their part whenever that time comes. If you feel it's still.
Whether they've decided to build houses or not.
Right, yes. Yes. And this was in lieu of requiring them to do a road, to construct the road all the way to the north lot line, which sometimes is required as part of a development. They needed that acreage in order to develop to the south, so they have this odd scenario in that the development is split by the road, but typically, if it wasn't, you would have to put in your entire road infrastructure to the lot lines. So this was our way of saying, okay, we're not going to require that, but we at least want an agreement in place ahead of time. It's a little unique. Now, if they didn't benefit, if they didn't need any land to the north, I would say it is what it is. That land develops when it develops, and we wait for that to happen. But I think they are. You're not interested, are you interested in the easements in the back of the lot so that you don't need the acreage?
We'll have to come back to you when we have the public hearing. We'll have an answer for that. We just
Okay.
learned today
Yes.
in discussion with you as to what our options were. But if you look at the floor area ratios at 35%, it's not going to affect these lots a lot by putting that easement on the back. The people are going to still maintain it like it's their lot. So I lean toward that direction.
Okay.
To make it simple. We're talking about less than 50,000 square feet, so it's
Yeah.
slightly over an acre. It's not a big area that we're short. So we'll figure it out and come back with a good solution, I believe.
And we'll be meeting with the attorney tomorrow morning. I'll just ask him what he has in mind for those maintenance responsibilities. That could also potentially be very minor. I don't anticipate anticipating it being much.
I do have a couple other things to just add, just so that the Plan Commission's totally aware. Hawthorne South, as we're calling it, Hawthorne Farm South, will be part of an overall master plan for all 3 phases, so it will be part of one HOA, Hawthorne and Hawthorne South, and under the same deed restrictions. So the deed restrictions you saw for the first phase, that will continue across the street. We have 78% of this plan is open space. The public-private trails, as Amy had talked about, we'll do the public trails along Neshota Road and Mission Road, and then the trails within the public lands will be public trails, and then the balance of the trails will be private. They will be all paved just like in Hawthorne, and maintained by the HOA. We talked about the little area for the bike repair and resting area on the corner there. We'll have a little plan for that. We're envisioning that basically being some kind of shelter where it'll have a roof, probably some kind of sitting area underneath it, and then a small area for tools for people that want to repair a bike. The stormwater, as you can see in here, at one time we had it all one larger basin. When we met with staff, they asked if they could, we could make it into 2 basins so we could get more of a circular trail through the public lands. We did that. Just be aware that we're showing a very large stormwater areas there. We don't know until we do this, the soil tests as to exactly the size of those. But that should be the worst case scenario as to what you see is those larger basins. Streets and sewer will be the same as Hawthorne as far as curb and gutter and cul-de-sac design. Landscaping will be similar to Hawthorne, and we'll carry that same fence along Neshota Road and Mission Road as you see on the other project, which we've gotten a lot of nice feedback from the community on that. And the monuments will be exactly the same as well, but it'll just be add south on the monument signs. With the Hawthorne Farm on it. We're trying to kind of identify these as 3 different neighborhoods because they come off of the main street, and so it's easier for people to direct people to their homes, and that's why we're calling it South, Hawthorne Farm South. And then I think beyond the open space requirement, there was a question on the cul-de-sac length. We met with staff. They said the maximum we could have cul-de-sac length was 1,000 feet without an emergency access. We are slightly over that, and so we will have to figure out a way to get a public emergency access out here. It's going to be difficult on the end where we did it at Hawthorne on the end of the cul-de-sac because the stormwater all flows to the west off that end. So we'll find a spot to create open space.
How far are you over the 1,000?
26 feet.
You can't shave that?
The chance, I know. We'll figure it out. We will figure it out.
Up the water pressure in the truck.
That's a big expense for 26 feet.
I know. The problem is you get these narrower fronts and it just squeezes those lots. You'd be amazed at how a couple feet can affect each lot. So we just want to make sure the lots are really quality buildable lots. And you got that one corner notched out. That was Mr. Knopf's daughter that really challenges us on that side there. So when we come back, we'll have an answer for you. But we agree.
With the zoning ordinance,
Yeah.
minimum lot width, so.
Sure.
But emergency services said, you guys have to make a number. And
Yeah.
We'll live with the 1,000 and figure it out.
Yeah, you brought up one neighbor, you know who she is. And another neighbor that's behind her spoke in favor of the development we just approved prior up on the hill. And, the people in the southwest corner there as well. So I think you're in good shape. You made a friend with the parish too, so I think you're in good shape as far as public acceptance and that as well.
And we'll reach out again like we did last time with Mission Prairie and with all those property
Yeah,
owners.
So you're proactively reaching out to the neighbors.
For sure. Yeah.
How are you connecting to the road to the south? What is it called? Mission? Is it Mission
That's
Prairie?
Red Chapel Court.
Red Chapel.
Right now, we're proposing, we have the trail along Mission Road, and then it jumps out into the right-of-way, and the trail would attach in the right-of-way to Red Chapel Court.
Okay.
And I'd like to talk to them and see if they would allow us to pull it off of the road, we'd try to do that and run it through their open space. But we have to have that discussion with them. But there's a stormwater basin right at the end of Red Chapel Court, right when it accesses Mission, and so it makes it tough to put it right along the street. You almost have to jump it into the right-of-way or pull it farther east.
We got to find a solution there somehow.
Yeah,
right?
we'll get a solution there. So a lot of people walk that road. It makes a lot of sense to have the trail there.
What are you thinking? When are you going to be able to come back to meet all of these different documents?
It's probably, you got to get through it's almost full engineering that you ask for at that point, and I'm guessing it'd be 2 to 3 months.
Do you want to do them together, or do you want to move forward with the GDP, which is minor adjustments to what was already approved?
If we get a good sense here that we're headed in the right direction, we'll just get it done and bring it back to you. And do
That's
it
a
one
faster
time.
route.
Right.
So the Plan Commission would just, if you do that, know that the date of that next meeting that you're scheduling the public hearing for is dependent on submittal of all of the documents.
Would it be safe to say that we could say, schedule a public hearing, once they give their feedback that they have met all the requirements that we're looking for, at that point, then it's just going to be an automatic schedule if we make that motion and do it? You know what I mean? In other words, if we say not next month, if it's another month or two beyond that, then once they green light that they've met what we have on the paper, then it can be scheduled.
If you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, I would be willing to make a motion to schedule a public hearing once the developer has met what they feel is the items listed in the packet here.
Second.
So question on that. So they would just communicate with you that they're ready, and that would come up at the very next Plan Commission meeting for us to schedule the meeting at that point?
No, I would notice the public hearing upon.
Based on that?
If
Okay.
that's what you want to do.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I mean, because otherwise you have to get all of this stuff and then have them come back and then wait a whole nother month just for scheduling.
Yeah.
Good idea, Commissioner.
Yeah.
He's got it.
Okay, is there any discussion?
In a second then?
Got a second, and just looking for discussion. You guys, our newer guys down there, you want us to go over any of it?
I think I follow.
Think we're going too fast here, or?
I'll yell.
Alrighty, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions passes.
Thank you.
Can I just
Yeah, good
clarify?
luck.
Keep it rolling.
Yeah.
Can I just clarify in that motion, to schedule a public hearing when the developer has provided the documentation required to the city planner for a revised PUD conditional use agreement development plan? Is that what we're looking at, Amy?
Yep. Yes, we'll schedule a public hearing for the CU, General Development Plan and SIP on submittal of all information.
You good?
Okay, yep.
Okay. All right, we will now move on to 9D. DELC 0798964, 310 Genesee Street. Owner, sorry if I mispronounce these names here. Owner Ryan Eisenhunt, DELC 0798862, 302 Genesee Street. Owner William and Judy Powlick, DELC 0798946, 005, 226 Genesee Street. Owner Bradley and Marcia Stocks, DELC 0798958, 208 Genesee Street. Owner Jacob and Jacqueline Fuchs, DELC 0798957, 200 Genesee Street. Owner Jeffrey Rademacher and Nancy Harvey, DELC 0798954 and DELC 0798953, 124 Genesee Street. Owner Michelle Kelly, and DELC 0798892, 600 Poplar Path. Owner, City of Delafield. Applicant, City of Delafield. Discussion on potential rezoning the subject properties and amending the land use plan to allow for low-intensity commercial use and to amend the land use plan and zoning for the cemetery. So once again, I just want to go over what I mentioned before. First, we'll have Amy give an overview. The Planning Commission will have some discussion. Then I'll ask each of the owners that are here, that I read off your name, to please come up, and you can have two-way discussion because you are also an applicant, even though the City of Delafield is the one that brought it, so that you have a discussion back and forth. And then we'll decide that when that's over, then the planning commission will discuss again, and then you'll make your recommendation on what you want to do. So this is not what we normally do, but this is an unusual situation, and we want to make sure we're doing it the right way.
Yep.
Okay? So Amy.
Okay. So we brought this up last month. This is part of the focus group project area, or this is one area that the focus group looked at, potentially considering this transition from residential to business. The discussion actually came up because the property owner to the south, the previous property owner, not the current property owner, was trying to sell the property, and the interest was really related to business. So people, and they actually were calling me too, folks wanting to use that property for business purposes. It just so happened that the focus group project was then going to be occurring, and I agreed to bring it up to that group. So as part of that project, the focus group recommendation, because of the traffic on Genesee Street and being so close to the interstate, recommended that the uses that would be permitted be limited to the uses that are similar in home occupations, which are uses allowed by right in a home. You can't make up more than 25%, the business can't make up more than 25% of the home. You can't have any employees that don't live on the property. And it's limited to your more like office type, or maybe a photo studio or a hair salon, pretty minor uses where you've got one person coming and going at a time. So they had recommended that similar to home occupation, but not requiring the residential component. So the idea was to always allow the residential uses to continue to remain as is, allow somebody to reconstruct a single family house out here if they so chose, but to also allow low intensity commercial uses. So at last month's meeting, we talked about it, and the recommendation was, or I was given the direction to lay out, pretty much as many uses as I could think of that may be appropriate. I'm not suggesting they're all appropriate, but that then we had that base to go back and start crossing off uses that didn't fit. And then you had also asked that a traffic feasibility be done, because we had talked about, well, maybe if accessing these sites off of Genesee Street isn't practical, maybe there would be an opportunity to put some kind of rear, I'll call it a parking easement, not a public alley, but a parking easement lane to allow people to get access to the site through the rear. So the engineering staff did do that, and I really apologize, but it looks like some of the map that went with it got cut off in the packet. So we did drop off copies. I believe the audience does have copies of that map right now. So what they had determined is that the area on the table, if you do not have
the
one.
packet, but the first couple of pages are some other pages referencing some of the
Other
other
properties.
properties that were presented tonight. So
So-
but they're all in there this evening.
It's in there.
So before going into what we do or don't think is appropriate, I think it's probably a good idea to go through the feasibility study, because depending on how you feel about the parking easement, it probably affects what kind of uses you think may or may not be appropriate in this area. So is that okay if I just quick run through the document? So engineering said that it is feasible to put in the alley, but there are definitely some things to consider. So they had laid it out anticipating a 20-foot wide lane. I don't know if I keep calling it an alley, know that I'm talking about a private parking easement. 10 feet set off of the back property line. They did want to, when they were looking at it, they were trying to extend it all the way north to Town Bank so that people could, go through that parking lot. But there is a 10-foot drop there, so that's not practical. So they do have like a secondary lane potentially connecting to Genesee Street on those northern properties, in between those northern properties. And then they noted that there are some site constraints that would need to be considered in order to do this, which may affect some of the property owners and the adjacent property owners to the east. So there need to be grading done in order to establish it. It may require some retaining wall construction. Tree removal would be necessary. The existing building configuration would not work in order to get a straight line. So it would be anticipating new construction instead of the reutilization of the existing homes. Maybe not all of them, but some of them. The overall intent would be to move those buildings closer to Genesee Street. And as we look at the code language, there is a recommendation to move them closer to Genesee Street so that if there is any parking, it is in the back of the lot or the side of the lot instead of along the main downtown corridor. And then there are internally drained areas to the east of the site, as well as on the corner lot of Poplar and Genesee, so stormwater management needs to be considered as part of any construction. And then also just consideration to the adjacent uses to the east being residential. And then another consideration is, how, and I think somebody had brought this up, how do you do it in order? So, it's nice, we have the property to the south is interested in developing their site, and they're the ones that abut Poplar Path. And they also own the adjacent property to the north. But beyond that, I don't believe it's the city's intent to force this upon people or do any kind of condemnation.
Absolutely not.
So because of that, then it really does become a matter of cooperation. So if somebody's in the middle and they want to sell their property for business purposes and they need that access, it's going to be a matter of the person south or north of them cooperating in order to make it happen. So that needs to be kept in mind. So staff did recommend a couple of things. One, again, an easement for the whole alleyway. Well, an easement requires their cooperation. Without that, you would need to condemn land, and that's not of interest to the city. You could, instead of requiring the alley, potentially eliminating driveway access points on Genesee Street and getting some of these owners to have shared driveways instead, so you don't have so many. And or if they're going to use Genesee Street, requiring as part of the site plan review for them to be able to turn around on the site so that they're not backing out on Genesee Street, they're looking at it. So just some other options. If the access is determined to not be feasible along the entire length and you are relying on traffic on Genesee Street, you probably do want to look at the intensity of uses quite a bit more carefully and consider that you're likely going to have driveways, and if they use the existing buildings, those attached garages or detached garages, or if they construct new, whether or not you want parking lots to be constructed and that additional traffic. So any questions on the feasibility study alone? Or comments or discussion, I guess?
I have been to many cities where, like Geneva, Cedarburg, where they do take homes and they turn them into craft stores, resale shops, all that kind of thing. And usually, we've always had to walk to them. There's a municipal parking lot, and people walk to them. That I'm wondering if we need to even put this in the plan, having an alley.
Yeah, it's a concept, and
Yeah.
it's going through the public process and
Because the lot is
weighing the
real-
pluses and minuses.
There's six houses from here to,
6,007 properties.
right, six houses. The municipal parking lot is right here. You're not that far away from if one of those houses turns into a small business enterprise. That I can't see why. I do it all the time. I mean, I go to Ripon, I go everywhere, and I wind up walking. And it's a great way because not only then by walking, having people walk, I walk into other businesses that I wasn't planning on going to. So I'm kind of not for the alleyway thing. There's a lot of problems that come. I don't know if you want to call alley or a lane. There's problems that come with that. I lived in the city. I know all about alleys and lanes and that, and they can be a real problem. I know because I had my car stolen in one of them. So yeah, I'm not for it at all because of the municipal parking is so close.
Yeah,
People
just to
can walk
maybe
to it.
support that to narrow, because there's a lot of options we could talk about, but I would to narrow the discussion, just listening to you talk about that alley, it just doesn't seem feasible.
Yeah.
Just the cost to do it, the hassle with, it just doesn't seem like it's a viable option.
And then you got one person holds
Yeah.
everything. Yeah, it's in the middle. What
I
do you
heard
do?
moving houses to do it. Did I hear that right?
Let's be very clear on that. Whatever changes we make, regardless of whether we asked for the easement, don't ask for the easement, people can live in that house and use it as a house that they can give to their grandkids. That house will always be there. It's
Yeah.
up to you to decide to sell the property, and the next owner is the one that would potentially decide not to keep the house,
Yeah.
right? But there's nothing that's going to make anybody move out of their house.
No, that I understood.
Right.
It sounded like the logistics of that
Right.
alleyway is quite difficult.
And this could actually change because, right, not where Town Bank and that is, there were homes there. And what happened is somebody came along, bought up the homes and put up the big bank.
Yeah.
So this can change in time, and I think that the owners are correct to let the market dictate what happens, because somebody could come along and offer them very good money for their homes and they could all be sold, and we can wind up looking at somebody tearing it down and putting up something else, So I think for now, forget about the lane, forget about the alley, and let the market dictate that.
And to further the discussion on the market, because they were asking, why are we being proactive when there's not a strong need except the property to the south? I actually have gotten calls on other properties, people wanting to inquire and reach out to property owners for office space. And they strong interest in having office space with walkability to downtown.
So you were just looking for flexibility in zoning?
In order to allow that.
Do things.
Yeah.
So we would continue to allow the residential uses. I mean, we talked about that last meeting. I don't think anybody here is interested in not allowing that.
We
Now,
do
but,
have a market need because of the dental inquiry. So that is a form of the market.
Right. So and then the next step would be, if you still want to support that, kind of figuring out how to lay out a district.
Yeah, I like the idea of the dental office in that corner. I know there's concern about traffic, and I drive through that corner every single day, and I've seen plenty of accidents from people on Genesee Street going too fast, not signaling and turning, and all the different configurations there. So it's not just one direction causing the traffic problems. I don't think the impact is going to be negative having the dental office there on the corner. I kind of view this as a separate item, looking at the alleyway that doesn't impact at all the dental office. And given that a lot of thought with the alleyway, I'm not a fan of that, partly because it's going right through the backyards of everyone's house. And, they would have to agree to have that put in, but what would that do on the resale value if they want to keep it residential? There's not a lot of alleys in the city here. And I think it would give an opportunity maybe for a larger developer at some point in the future, who knows when or if, to say, hey, let's just buy up these 6 houses or all these properties here, and we want to take care of this. And now everybody gets something that's good. But that's something that is a hypothetical going forward. Right now, I just don't think the alley is a right method to go for obvious reasons. But I also don't think that doesn't impact negatively the dental office on the corner.
If somebody decides down the road they want the alley, is there anything preventing it from being agreed to and us agreeing to it? I mean, are we making any commitment that we can't go back on by saying, no, we don't want the alley?
Well, I'm just talking out loud here, but if we don't give them an access off of Poplar with the construction of the dental office as a minimum, then you would never have that opportunity to do it in the future. So
Now, how come that can't just be an access for that property and that property only? Why does it have to go all the way through, or does it?
I'm just talking out loud like Ed described. Maybe somebody buys all 6 of those properties and they want to put in the alleyway, or now I'm using your word.
Say late.
they would need the right from the dental office to be able to do that, right? And if we took care of that now, then if that were to ever happen in the future and didn't do anything else with the rest of the properties, then at least that access to Poplar would be available.
Understood.
Conceivably, you could do that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
we
sure.
So we could
do it
just
within
put that in on that one property and let somebody with an imagination and a huge checkbook that would buy all those properties and come up with a winter plan that we, right,
So
create.
what you're saying is if we amended it so that that alleyway or
Yeah.
laneway is acceptable if all 6 are sold type of thing? Is that what you're saying?
I think what
No, I think we're just saying if we required that easement for the dental office only, and that's all we did, then it would at least allow that opportunity in the future to, if somebody consolidated those properties, or the abutting property wanted to sell their house, somebody wanted to come in and put in something similar to a dental office, then they could have the ability to connect. It would work either as a group or it would work one by one, but they have to be sequential, right? You can't jump to the end.
Right.
Right.
So for the dental property, do we need to change zoning as is?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we can address that as a one-off
Yep.
and then address the other 6 or 7.
In a different way. So maybe go back to the focus group recommendation for those properties to change the zoning to just be the home occupational recommendation, which was no more than 2 employees, and let it go.
So what, if you're not sure about the alley, but if the dental office wants to put it in and provide the opportunity, or you want them to do that, then yeah, I would recommend that we write the district so that maybe instead of a long list of permitted uses, we are a little bit more general and then state that any property that does not have direct public access to a public road, not including Genesee Street, or does not have access to a alley approved by the city, then they are limited to, and I can kind of spell out the home occupation bit. And you can decide how many employees or customers you think are appropriate, how much traffic you want to come to the site. Then it would be very limiting with the exception of the dental office because they have access to a public road. Because then what you would end up with is, the accountant or insurance person that wants
Which
to
is
have
the
an
type of
office.
interest that you've seen, correct?
Right, yes.
I'd be fine with that. Do it for the dental office.
Yeah.
Put in your language that it has to go into a public road. Without that, here are the things.
So, and if we did that, then I probably wouldn't limit it to a dental office, because what if they want to sell the dental office and becomes something else? But, would you want it to be, so these are really specific uses. Would it be easier to do a little bit more of a paragraph form where it's that we're describing the type of use and the use requires your approval? So it would be a professional office.
As long as they maintain in single little lots, then we should limit it. But if somebody does buy all 6, then we shouldn't limit it.
Yep.
Right, so we need to have that flexibility then.
Well, and if they buy all 6, then the idea would be they would then use an alley. They would use an alley. Unless you want them, if they buy all 6, to have an access off of Genesee.
But they could come up with their own plan for whatever they want to do.
That's just it, yeah.
We'd still want to see some limitations. We talked about that last time. I don't think we want a massive liquor store or something in there.
Right.
Yeah, I think we're talking about just home occupation, which
No, I'm talking
is
about
2 employees,
If somebody
right?
bought out 5 properties, if somebody
Oh.
bought out all those, we still want to have some limitations into what business can go in there.
So I think we can narrow it down to specific uses, and we can still go through that tonight. But with number of employees, so a home occupation, there's 2. The city's code has 2 different things, and I might goof up the terminology, but home occupation, I believe, is allowed by right with, the employees must live on the property. So you can't have additional employees that don't live on the property. A home business requires a conditional use in a resident, so these are uses allowed in residential districts. A home business can have up to, I think, 1 employee that doesn't live on the property. And they, in those cases, they can only make up 25% of the floor area, which is where we want to get away from that requirement. So I don't know if you want to limit it that much, or you want to limit it to no more than 2 employees
Well, that would
that don't
require
live
a
on the
conditional
property.
use?
No, that's what, right now, in a residential district, you can get you can ask for a home business or a home occupation. It's just one requires a CU and one is permitted by right.
One thing about that, when it's a home business, are they allowed signage?
There might be something like 2 square, I don't know, 2 square feet or something
A very
like
small
that.
sign.
Yeah, I remember this because my neighbor had small business out of his house. He could have his business name, but he couldn't list hours. It was weird back then, because this was a long time ago.
Oh, I would, I would recommend if you want to get away from the residential component that you probably allow what's allowed in downtown. So right now, this is in the downtown design guideline area, or at least the strip along the highway, but in downtown, they're not allowed more than 25 a sign can't be more than 25 square feet.
Pretty big.
Yeah, that's pretty big for a residential. I wouldn't want to be looking out my window at something sitting on my neighbor's front lawn that's so close to me either.
So that's something to think about then. You could have signage size requirements specific to this district.
Well, let's say we've got possibly 5 property owners that don't want anything to do with a zoning change. And 1 person on the corner that does.
Yeah.
Which is very likely. Does B5 fit there or not? Or
Well,
if it
that's a
doesn't-
business district.
I know, but
Oh.
it's no different. I mean, it's kind of a continuation of what's exactly across to the south on
Yeah.
the freeway.
Right. Well, it's
I mean, it's
mostly
possible.
office research.
It's office and dental.
It allows,
Professional.
yeah.
Office research.
You can have a dental
institutional.
clinic.
Yeah,
Very-
right. Well, I have one in my backyard,
Yeah.
B5.
I mean, I'm seeing 1, but it would be, I mean, all I can see is that the lot size has to be 40,000 feet. And this, I don't think this one is, but.
Yeah, you would need to make probably some adjustments to B5, and I don't know if you want everything that's allowed in B5 on that property.
I'm just saying, without creating a
No,
new,
you wouldn't.
without creating a new zoning district, is there possibility for the 1 applicant on the corner to get a zoning change just for that property?
I would say that's a decision that you guys can consider. As a planner, it's nice to have continuity.
Yeah. I don't wanna
and,
be creating
you have
islands.
the businesses, you have the whole business district is to the north. It's this 1 block that's excluded.
Understood.
And then he's going to have business. So I understand that it's complicated because there are so many residences in the area. It might be nice to just talk to our attorney tomorrow. It's my understanding that it's not considered spot zoning when it's been thought out as part of a planned process, which was done as part of the focus group.
Well, that's what I'm saying is if that was the case for this, that would be a transition. Like I said, you're continuing the zoning that's to the south. It's not.
It's just interrupted by the freeway.
It's interrupted by the cemetery, right,
Yeah.
in the freeway.
Yeah, the
But
cemetery.
but given an easement there for potential access point off of Genesee, should something ever occur with those other properties, the zoning would be something that could be as a part of that focus group saying, hey, this is kind of a plan, but I don't know if that works or not. That may be the least disruptive, but.
But, you know what, good idea. The only downside, maybe from the homeowner's perspective, if I'm reading this right, probably a lot got cleared up today in the sense that if we rezoned it, nothing really changes if the 5 or 6 people never sell.
True.
Nothing changes, other than there's a dental on the end, right? So the only negative they would have is their neighbor decides to live in a house where they also cut hair, two hair cutting, stations, right? That type of thing. That would, and some may see that as a negative and some may not, don't know. But by zoning that whole area this way, they now have flexibility for those that might want to exit someday. Their homes could be of more worth because of that zoning change, which is maybe some of them who maybe don't want to ever leave, don't care, but some who might think, well, I don't know, maybe in 5 years I'm moving somewhere else, they'd want that zoning change, right?
Yeah.
So
It's not an odd situation. I mean, if you think of the heritage on Highway 16 and 83, I believe that the homeowners that are directly adjacent to that were suggested that they change their zoning to residential so they'd have more leverage to say, we don't want business and we're not a business district. And they for the potential of the long-term future resale value of their home, they're like, no, I think business suits me just fine. So they saw the upside as a long-term possibility. So.
I'm just spitballing here, but I've thought about this a great deal because I've seen over the years small businesses kind of extend out into the residential area downtown. One of them would be where the flower shop is, the ceramic shop, and that I'm wondering if I go back to creating a different zoning district where because we don't know what's going to happen in the future, and I can see it happening, that the downtown area is going to spread out into some of those residential older homes down there, like Brown's Insurance, stuff like that, that maybe we should think about it, another zoning district.
Well, and that's where, so the language that we provided is meant to be a transitional district, which might mean that down the road in the future, the same district could be used for other pockets on the fringe.
Right.
So we are recommending, a new district if you do this, because I'm even looking at B5 and I understand that the whole it says medical and dental centers, clinics, hospitals, medical laboratories fits, but a hospital or a printing, blueprinting, or a bank even, with a drive-through. Those are actually pretty intense uses that are intended for the highway. I mean, and I know you know that. So I still think we should stick with a new district because it is unique, and we do want to control the intensity of uses.
That way, we'd be able to design it specifically, and we could tweak it if we need to in the future.
I wonder if you could. I mean, I don't know if the public would be concerned with maybe amending the land use plan for the whole stretch, which would be probably could go into central business, which talks about residential transition to commercial downtown or a mix of residential and commercial.
Saying CBD2?
Well, just central business is a land use plan category, so it's general. And then only zone as they develop so that you can be very specific with what is allowed on each property. So as part of that land use plan, so it wouldn't really be considered anything spot because you're considering the whole area, but then saying that as each property comes in, it gets zoned. Based on
given that we've cleared up a lot, can we ask for feedback now?
Yeah, so I'm trying to judge where the good spot is to be in. Trying to make sure all your questions are answered, and then I want to bring them up.
One thing, could we create a district that'd be like this NB to CBD, where it expands into CBD when more than 2 or 3 lots get conjoined? We could give it certain sizes, and then they would have a shared access way between 2 or 3.
So what we did in the district is the mock district we started, so that we have something to talk about, is we looked at the existing lots that are there now, and the minimum lot size and width are based on what's out there, so that we don't create any non-conforming parcels, but we wouldn't allow any splits either.
Right.
So none of these properties are going to get split up. And the property this further south has the utility line. They're not going to be able to split that. And then another issue is what is an appropriate front yard setback or road setback, because those houses are all set back pretty far. And ideally, we do want them closer to the road so you get all the parking and stuff in the back at the same time. That is something to consider because now they're going to be looking at structures in front of them. So you would want to look at that carefully. But as far as a district goes, I mean, you could name it anything you want. I think I have in here Downtown Gateway Zoning District, which is DG1, or Neighborhood Business and Residence District, which is NB1, or you could do CBD4 and call it Residential Commercial Transition as your CBD4.
We don't have a 3, do we?
You do.
Oh, we do have a 3.
Yeah, there's a
I was
spot.
like, why are we skipping?
I think it's the hotel. Is that 3?
CBD3 is like campus setting type
Yeah. Oh,
environments.
that's blank
So I
campus.
think like ID, the whole hotel, I think that might be CBD3, and it's the bigger mixed.
It's the campus.
To the root of what are they think?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, not selling, it's not gonna.
I don't-
Any more questions up here?
Yeah, I get a feeling that the Gateway one, that one, is that something we could use in other parts then?
Yes, I think we would try to intentionally write everything so that if you found another really good transition bit, you could use the same district.
Oh, so if.
But you got to think about,
So if we spread out that way or this way within the downtown, we could implement this.
yeah, you
first
just
one.
have to think about when we get to the minimum requirements, like we are saying 15,000 square feet because we don't want these lots to get split up. So,
Right.
that might not play perfectly in other areas. But you could also change this district too. And
I like the neighborhood business because the gateway implies it can only be done at
On
gateway
the
areas. For
fringes.
neighborhood
Yeah,
business,
fringes.
something comes in that makes sense. More in the interior,
Right,
you're not calling it gateway.
because there are still some in the
So
interior.
I like the flexibility of a neighborhood
Yeah,
business.
sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah. It sounds good.
Anybody else with questions for Amy? Okay, if you guys, any of you would like to come up, I mean, two-way discussion, happy to address your concerns.
All at once or one at a time?
No, there's two.
However you want to
there's two
manage it.
chairs,
We're
two
flexible.
mics.
My issue is.
Yeah, we just need your name and address one more time,
Marcia
please.
Stocks, 226 Genesee Street. Intensity. That term is so loosely defined. I'd like to see if you decide to put in a district that a conditional use would probably be a good idea. Because if I've got a parade of women marching down the street, running up the driveway in the house next to me, antiquing, that's going to be a little bit of a disturbance. Whereby the dental office, my dentist is in a residential area. You barely know it. It's a very low-intensity business. But other things that were in the downtown plan where you had crossed things off, they require a lot of customers to keep their business afloat. And that's something that disturbs the peace of the neighborhood. So I'd like to see a little more definition regarding if you have to rezone this entire block, just exactly what that would entail as far as people coming and going.
Yeah, Jacob Foyt's, 208 Genesee Street. Just a few additional comments based on conversation.
Just microphone, please.
Yep, of course. Oh, it moves great. So the properties themselves, as you noted, are set fairly far back. A lot of the properties are quite narrow, where the houses are really on top of each other. In the case of us, I have my child's birthday parties basically in your side lot. I hope you don't mind. But just they're really not configured well to not be abandoned by some commercial use coming in. Saying Nancy to my left, really her bedroom overlooks my driveway. I have a kind of side garage on the bottom of the house. So I think if you really looked in detail at these properties, any amount of zoning that allowed customer access where people that you don't know are coming within feet of your bedroom window, within feet of, you know, your very personal space, because of these way these properties have been set up, they've been set so far back of Genesee to have that amount of privacy, but then they're very close to each other laterally. You know, respect the comments on Poplar and traffic. One of the comments I wanted to include, and I included in the written, was just so everybody's aware, you know, the city of Delafield does not control that intersection at Poplar and Genesee and 94. If something were to go into this and a larger issue arises, it's not within the city's control to address that. So that's just something I think that should be considered as you, you know, consider what you want to do with this space. Any questions for me? I thought this was going to be two-way.
I was assuming you would ask us questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. You guys, I mean, you flushed out your thoughts on it.
Does the zoning flexibility, again, if we were to change it and create this ability for a low intensity, whatever that definition is, the possibility in the future to increase your ability to sell at a higher, does that have any interest or any resonate with you at all?
Not my area of expertise. I would say when I purchased my home, either of the neighbors were currently used for business, I would not have purchased that house. The way it's set on the lot and the proximity to really any type of business would have been enough to shy me away. But that's an anecdotal opinion.
Yeah, sure. No, that's why I asked.
Don't you look at it the other way around, where your existing property may be worth more in the long run because you could sell to somebody who might be interested in doing something else?
Right. So the example would be, just pick a number. You list your house as a residential house, and just pick a number, $450,000. If you had some type of business zoning in there, somebody might be interested in purchasing it for considerably more because of the flexibility in the zoning.
Yeah, frankly speaking, I wouldn't want to do that to my neighbors.
But not only that, but if you're considering that and the assessor comes along, oh my gosh, this is a commercial property.
Okay, so
That's an
that was a
issue.
question that you brought up, so let's be real clear that if the zoning changes, your taxes will not change.
Well, but if you consider by ad valorem taxing, and you're considering that property to be worth more, would it
It's
not?
gonna only, the taxing is based on its current use, not its future use. The only realization of the increased taxes would be when it changed to some other type of use. Then there would be the opportunity to increase the taxes on the property. But even if the land use changes, as long as you continue to operate it as a residential house, that's what your taxes would be. So just, I want to be real clear on that.
Yeah.
Or you're assessed based on the
current
property
use.
as used. You're assessed based on property as used.
If you sold your house, they tore it down, they put up an accounting office, right, with whatever it is, 2 or 3 or 4 employees or that type of thing, then its use would change and it has the opportunity to be reassessed at a higher value. That's kind of the point that Dan is making, that, if the land use has changed, your sale price, if they want to change the use, could go up considerably.
So to directly answer your question, I think my property, 208 Genesee Street, probably has the biggest opportunity for that sort of upside. I think I have the largest lot there. It's sort of set.
Our lots are the same size.
Oh, yours is the same size as mine. Okay, so it's just the way it's set up there. So, I certainly think there's opportunity for individual lots, and trying to not be selfish about this. The lots to the side of me are much smaller, and I think could end up being abandoned. I think we've seen that, where you get some residences that get stuck in a place where, hey, we've got a couple businesses around this, and now we've got one residence, and what's the plan then? If you got a business that has my property, maybe has her property, there's some standing businesses there. I think we have to consider the entirety of the way that this is going to be used to not have that happen. Regarding a gateway district, I wanted to comment on that a little bit. I think there's a lot of conversations, I'm not privy to them or haven't been keeping up with them, about development to the south of 94. And I think consideration should be made for how these properties would fit into that plan. It is a residential transition through there. If we're having traffic all the way to the dental office, or to that property on the corner, are we then asking people to walk over 94? Because people do it now, and it makes me a little nervous every time I see them do it. And so just a consideration for what you're forming as a gateway and what these properties serve as that transition.
And that's why that gateway, I don't like that designation, because it could move further south.
Right.
And it will someday.
Yeah.
And we will have a new bridge someday too, that will be
Yeah.
up to standards.
And that's when I think,
It's
that's when I
coming
think
sooner than later.
these properties should be addressed is
I don't know
when
about that.
that intersection can be addressed by the state or by the city, whatever form that takes, and it's understood what's gonna happen to the south, and then the entire area can be developed in a way that makes sense for the long term. I know you plan to live there the rest of your life, but I'm probably gonna eventually outgrow ours, so.
I've been there 52 years. The neighborhood has changed many times, but some of the people living in the neighborhood are generational, and many of them stay into their late 90s and early hundreds.
And we don't want to do anything
It's a pretty
that,
stable area.
and we don't want, I know none of us want to do anything that's gonna, not allow that to happen, and that
In
is
peace.
not part of any of this discussion, right?
In peace. Thank you for the time.
Anything
Sure.
else?
I mean, are you opposed to home office type uses where it's employee, somebody who either lives on the site or maybe it's 2 or 4 people come for the day,
Like employees or customers?
employees?
I'd feel much more comfortable with employees. I think customers to a certain extent. I mean, you guys just have a draft out and obviously would like time to see hey, this is what we really think would happen. But I think the thing that has to be considered when you look at what sort of use would be allowed is the privacy implication of that, right? It's one thing when it's a couple of employees, you get to know those employees, you're seeing them every day, it's not a big deal versus random folks show up, you don't know who these cars are. I mean, our driveways, in some cases that Nancy and I, our driveways are right next, my driveway's basically on the property line. Somebody gets out and starts walking around. I think you also have to consider customers coming in wrong driveways, especially if we're not going to allow significant signage. People coming into the wrong driveway, it's an uncomfortable situation, obviously, in that area.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the uses, what kind of
Nancy.
art, what kind of haircuts, what kind of piercings. I mean, you get a lot of things that could end up into these categories that are home,
And
right?
I think you have a lot of citizens that want to comment on this with the school being across the street from it as well.
Understood.
I think there's a lot of things that need to be crossed off the list
Yeah.
because of that school presence. And
I do too.
I can't emphasize enough the traffic coming out of there. I'm sure you guys have all tried to make
Right.
it through there that time of day. But,
Right.
the driveways we have directly opposing their driveways makes for some interesting double left-hand turns.
And we intentionally made the list long because it's easier to
Yeah.
chop off than
Already started
think
chopping
of
off.
something.
On that note, though, I mean, also consider, I don't think there's any property owners currently planning to sell, or at least of the few that I've talked to. So, consider how much effort the planning commission should put into developing this type of zoning district that may go unused for quite some time.
So with this neighborhood one, what we're looking at is like a very small home business. Would be someone who maybe repairs computers as a hobby, or my husband has a friend who loves bicycles, and he does a lot of repairs, but he's the only one doing it in his home.
I mean, you could, if you wanted to have it really low-key, you could say no retail or customer traffic and then suggest types of uses like that. You're not going to catch them all, but
Right.
so you could list types so that when somebody comes in for a proposal, you remember what that meant. Or you could do the land use plan thing with a written statement that talks about how the area it's a transitional area that is not ready for business use until certain things
I like that.
happen. I mean, you could do that where you're,
Do the land use plan, give the dentist what he needs,
Right.
and then do the land use plan, and take them one by one if they ever come up.
right.
Yeah.
So that would
You all right with that
probably,
one?
Yeah, I mean, I think
That
that's
would- Then there wouldn't be any zoning change. It would
Yeah.
just be there in the land use plan if that person came around and gave you all $1 million for your houses and wanted some kind of
Then
development.
they can have somebody pulling into the driveway. As it is right now, people come to turn around, they'll pull halfway up my driveway, and then they have to figure out how they're gonna back down in again.
Yeah, that's-
And
Can I
it's-
get your name
it's
for
kind of-
you?
Oh,
Grass?
Nancy Rademacher, sorry.
you.
And it's not Harvey anymore. We got married 2 weeks after we bought the house. I haven't gone around to changing it yet. 26 years and,
So is what you're saying then, we would, for the dental, we would just, that would be a spot zone change and then the rest is land use?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the
Or
land use
however
plan
Amy
could be
thinks we
written
should
that
deal
the
with it.
zoning, it would spell out, so that it doesn't seem like every single time somebody comes in, you just keep changing the code. It's intentional. Like, we are looking at every site very carefully, and the code may adjust accordingly based on changing times. So, like, when I worked at Waukesha County, we had an agricultural transition land use category. It was agricultural lands that were intended to transition over time once the area, certain things happened within the area, sewer and water, or the neighborhood around it developed, or the city center was fully occupied or mostly occupied. So, I mean, it's not really spot zoning. It's we're waiting until the circumstance is right.
It's on hold.
It's on hold. It's a holding pattern.
Yeah.
I think that's appropriate. I think most of the residents recognize that this is eventually going to be part of downtown. It's not going to be an appropriate place for us to live if we just try to slap a new, just force it into being business sort of thing.
Right.
So do we want to come back next? Do you want me to think of land use plan language specific to this
Yeah.
area
Yeah.
and focus more on that?
Look at it the next
Is,
time.
is there a way we can, well, I'm sure there is, distribute those notes so we can solicit feedback from the residents that are involved here in the interim? So we're-
Share them.
I know this is a little longer than some of our meetings, but, so they understand what's going on and what we're considering. So, just like we got a preliminary approval, like, yeah, this is a good idea, we're heading in the right direction, to the developer that was just in here before, that they kind of give us that same kind of feedback if we're in the right track or not.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I mean, it would be nice if there was a representative that I communicated with amongst all of you, and I don't know if we have our own internal meeting with the neighborhood before coming to Plan Commission.
Why don't we do that?
Have a staff meeting with
Why don't we do that?
the neighbors.
I don't
'Cause this
know.
takes
I'm not
a
the one
while.
who sets those up, but I'm just saying.
Something like this that obviously has a great impact on people takes a while, and so it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to, staff could work with the neighbors. That doesn't mean we're going to come to a perfect resolution, but at least we're coming to the meeting knowing the comments on all sides.
Yeah, happy to help in any way.
And are you comfortable with how we got here? I know during your citizens' comments, you thought there was some concern, or do you have a good kind of why we're here?
Honestly, no. This coming in tagged through the focus group, it did not seem appropriate, at least as an outsider, seeing what happened and kind of how it feels like it was snuck in there based on some requests from property owners versus what that focus group was deemed to do. And then, what happened last month with, the inability to comment. I think you guys should try to be as accessible and inclusive as possible in these types of things. And it's hard for a normal citizen who's having their property rezoned to find a way into that process. And then, the last week of frantic neighbors coming over to me, while I'm trying to shovel the sidewalk saying they want to tear my house down. I mean, I think the Plan Commission has to consider how they can avoid things like that happening in the future.
Well, it's understood, nobody's tearing any houses down, right?
And to me, it was always clear. But I think you have to appreciate the fact that an engineer report was released that said, yeah, we got to tear all these houses down for this alley to be feasible. It's ridiculous. I know it's ridiculous, but it happened.
I get it.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, and I appreciate those comments too, because it always helps to know how to do things differently. We did we did send letters out before the last meeting to everybody and the neighbors affected. And I did not hear from anybody until that meeting, so
There was no direction in the letter to reach out to you.
Okay.
There was no direction in the letter on when the appropriate time to speak was. Understanding what consent versus non-consent agenda is not something your layperson generally understands. So I think a little bit more instruction on how to appropriately provide comment would have been appropriate.
Okay.
We appreciate the constructive feedback.
Welcome.
And the alley, when I looked out my backyard this afternoon, and I'm literally from here to the sign there, and you practically got through the back of my backyard. The idea of suddenly having an alley there just Yeah, freaked me out. I'm sitting there going, now where are my dogs gonna go? They're always over at Jake's anyway.
At the birthday party.
Yeah, for the birthday party, they do like kids.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
So
Is there
I have
anybody
your
else?
email, and
Yes.
I'll reach out to you if you don't mind communicating with your neighbors, or I can also do that too if we need to set that up.
Amy, or Ken, is there anything with the dental office itself and its timeline that we have to consider or?
Well,
to help?
obviously, they want to move forward, and I think what we can do between now and March, because I think March is a little bit of a longer month. February was pretty short this last one. I'll try to reach out to them, set up a meeting, see if we can come to any kind of agreement, and then we'll meet next month. And I think we consider that, how do we move forward if it's only the dental group versus the whole stretch for the next meeting, so that they have a understanding and can move forward on their own.
And we might want to put in the notes just to check the transmission line concern.
Yes,
Yeah, I was
I
gonna-
think at the last meeting they mentioned.
Yeah, at
Okay.
the last meeting. yeah.
And do we still need,
Before we move on to property.
Okay.
do we still need to clean up something with the cemetery? Did we do
The
that?
cemetery is all part of this, yes.
Okay.
So,
You can break that off. Nobody
I know. So although.
No birthday parties in the cemetery.
Although the cemetery is a no-brainer,
Yeah.
this whole process stuff is actually very time-consuming. We just did it with Spherus. There's a public hearing at council. It goes back and forth. You have to prepare a resolution. So it would be easier to roll it in with another activity. And then the only other thing I wanted to point out is with the focus group, this is not the only area where people are going to be surprised. The whole idea there was to have a diverse group of citizens to identify areas within the city that are potential opportunities for change. There's a lot of property owners that are going to be affected through this process, and I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to get those comments, because we'll continue to improve our public participation and notice as part of it. But I don't think it was meant to sneak. There's certainly no intentions on sneaking anybody in. It was meant to just find areas in the city that where change might be an opportunity.
I think though, it sounds like the lesson, I don't know if lesson learned, because I've seen this commission do it, is anytime a developer comes in or permit, keep encouraging them, go see the neighbors, go talk direct.
Right, be a good neighbor.
We do it every meeting
Yeah.
that
We
we
just
meet
gotta
with them.
keep
If they're
beating
getting
that
on this
drum.
agenda, we have that discussion with them.
Yeah.
And the honest truth of it is, some are very good at it, some are
Not so
pretty good at it, and some aren't good at it at all.
True,
Yeah, we'll just have to keep beating that drum.
yeah. I think it's so important. Be a good neighbor.
Okay, so do we have to answer any questions for you guys? I'd like to hear just a little feedback on your timeline.
We're kind of waiting on just getting rezoning. I mean, literally. I mean, my builder has everything all done. We just need to know, we're trying to get to the next step.
Big question too is, none of these guys have questions for us. I mean, that's.
Yeah, you guys can do that
Yeah, no, this is-
after the meeting or whatever, yeah.
Love to,
Yeah.
they've got concerns.
So is it feasible to be able to approve something to keep their process moving in March?
Well, it requires a land use plan and rezone amendment. So I think we need to, when we come back in March, we can lay out the two different
Right.
avenues.
Will
But
we be able to approve it in March or no?
oh, no.
No, public.
No.
So if you support it, then we got to get to a point where we have recommended language that then has to go to a public hearing. So a land use plan amendment, the Plan Commission adopts a resolution to recommend that Common Council approve something. They need a 30-day notice at Common Council based on that resolution. And then you have to do the rezone, which that public hearing happens at Plan Commission.
So for their benefit, best case is May, probably.
Yeah, probably June.
Yeah.
Process.
Land use changes and things just take longer, and they should, right? They
Due
should.
diligence, yeah.
So, Okay, sounds good. Move on to new business. Item number 10, we have none. Number 11, zoning and ordinance revision, none. Report of city officials, planning commission meeting dates and deadlines. The regular meeting will be March 30th, 2022. Regular meeting submittal deadline, March 15th, 2022. I'll refer you to any correspondence in the packet. Item C, planner. Anything you'd like to go over?
No. Forgetting anything?
Not that I
You're
can
looking
think of. Okay, building inspector's not here. I'm sure he had more good news about new building permits. Item 13, seeing no further business, we are now adjourned at 9:24. Thank you, everyone.